Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to unpack the stacks of information, the psychological quirks that really shape how we make choices. And today, oh boy, we are looking deep into one of the biggest traps out there. It doesn't just hold you hostage. It kind of makes you keep paying the ransom again and again. I'm talking about how things you've already spent your time, your money, your effort, how they can literally dictate your future decisions. If you've ever, forced yourself to keep doing something you actually hate just because you'd already started, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. We are getting into the sunk cost fallacy. Okay, let's paint a picture. Super relatable one. You bought a concert ticket maybe 2 weeks back, say $100. Now concert day arrives. It's raining, it's cold, and you've got that scratchy throat thing going on. You know a cold's coming. Everything logical in your head is yelling, stay home, get under a blanket.
Okay.
But then there's that other voice, right? The loud one saying, but you paid the $100, don't waste it. So what happens? You drag yourself out. Maybe spend more on a cab because of the rain. You stand there, shivering, feeling miserable. You barely enjoy the music. And yep, next day, you're properly sick. You basically paid twice, once with money, once with your health, and a miserable night, all because you couldn't let go of that initial $100.
It's such a perfect and perfectly ironic example, isn't it? We can all see how illogical it is when you lay it out like that, yet we all do it, or variations of it. We end up sacrificing future well-being, future happiness, even more resources, trying to somehow save something from the past that's just gone. It's already sunk.
Yeah.
We really need to unpack why our brains seem hardwired for this kind of self-sabotage.
Okay, let's do that. Starting with the basics. What exactly is a sunk cost? The idea itself is pretty straightforward, but the psychology behind it?
Yeah.
Wow. A sunk cost is basically any cost, money, time, emotion, effort, whatever that you've already spent and cannot get back. It's done, finished, unrecoverable. Doesn't matter if it's that $100 ticket or maybe 5 years you poured into a business idea that's clearly failing, or, even a decade in a relationship that's just not working anymore. That investment, it's in the past. It's history. Nothing you do now brings it back.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the cold, hard logic of economics clashes so dramatically with how we actually behave. From a purely rational economic standpoint, any decision you make now about the future, well, it should completely ignore sunk costs because their current value is zero, zip, nada. They are irrelevant to what you should do next. What's done is done.
But that's not what happens, is it? That's where the fallacy part comes in. The sunk cost fallacy makes us put that past unrecoverable cost right smack in the middle of our future decision-making. We keep going, not because the thing we're doing has future merit, but because we feel this weird compulsion, like we can somehow claw back that initial investment if we just stick with it.
Exactly. It's the classic throwing good money after bad scenario. People actually escalate their commitment. They pour more resources in, often way more than the initial amount, just to try and justify that first spend, which of course usually guarantees an even bigger loss down the line. It happens so often, and sometimes on such a huge scale that it's earned another name. A really famous one tied to a massive government project, the Concord fallacy.
Ugh, Concord. Right, this is where it gets really big. We're not just talking personal choices anymore. This fallacy can wreck national budgets.
Oh, absolutely. The Concord story is the textbook case. Back in the 1960s, the UK and French governments decided to build this supersonic passenger jet. Huge investment from the start, billions. But here's the key. Pretty early on, maybe by the early 70s, the financial projections looked awful. It became crystal clear the plane would never be profitable. Operating costs were insane, and not enough airlines actually wanted to buy it. Rationally, any sensible business would have pulled the plug right then and there, cut their losses.
But they didn't, did they?
Nope. National pride got involved, sure, but the sunk cost logic was overwhelming. They kept pumping money into it, development, maintenance, for almost 30 years.
30 years.
Mm-hmm. And the justification was always the same. We can't stop now. Think of all the money we've already spent. It would all be wasted. They couldn't separate the idea of stopping the financial bleeding from admitting we made a mistake way back when.
So the result was?
Billions. Billions of pounds and francs down the drain. Because two major governments were psychologically tracked by their own initial investment. They were essentially investing in validating the past instead of making sound decisions for the future.
And you see this pattern elsewhere too, right? Like big construction projects. I remember reading about the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
Iconic now, obviously, but the construction, that was another sunk cost nightmare, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Another classic. The initial budget was something like, what, 7 million Australian dollars?
Yeah, something like that. Seems tiny now.
Right. But costs started spiraling almost immediately. design changes, engineering problems. Instead of pausing, reassessing, maybe even abandoning that specific design when it was clear the budget was blown, they just kept going, pushing forward.
Because they'd already spent so much.
Exactly, because cutting their losses felt like failure. The final bill ended up being over $100 million.
Oh.
It's a stunning building, no doubt. But yeah, it's also kind of a monument to how easily sunk costs can just completely overwhelm rational management.
Okay, so these big examples are powerful, but let's bring it back down to the personal level. Because this isn't just about government budgets or construction. We need to talk about the emotional costs for you, the listener. Sunk cost is deeply tied to our feelings, our time, our emotional energy. That's often where it hurts most.
That's absolutely crucial. It's not just money.
Think about the toxic relationship trap. This is a really common and painful one. Maybe you're in a relationship, and honestly, it's making you miserable. Constant fighting, unhappiness. You just know deep down it's not right. It needs to end. But you stay. Why? Because that voice pipes up. But we've been together for 5 years, 10 years. Think of all that time. It would be such a waste.
And there it is. That time, the shared history, the emotional effort, that's the sunk cost. Yes, those years were lived. They happened. But they are gone. Staying in unhappiness today doesn't magically make those past years better or more worth it. The rational decision, and often the bravest one, is the one that leads towards happiness now and in the future. The past shouldn't get to blackmail your future happiness.
It's the same logic, just as devastating with the career or education trap, isn't it? Maybe you picked a university major, perhaps because your parents wanted you to. It didn't seem like a good idea at 18. 2 years in, you absolutely hate it. It drains you. You dread going to classes or work, but you feel stuck. You think, I've already put in 2 years. And all that tuition money, if I switch now, all that effort, all that money, it's just wasted.
Again, that's the sunk cost talking. That money is spent. That time is lived. Continuing down a path that makes you miserable for the next 30 or 40 years of your working life, just to somehow validate those first 2 years, that's the definition of the fallacy. The truly rational choice is to start moving towards the career or path that will bring fulfillment, starting today. The cost of quitting is finite. The cost of staying miserable, that can be limitless.
Okay, so if we can recognize this, if we understand the logic is flawed,
Yeah.
why is it so incredibly hard to just stop? Why are we so stubborn about cutting our losses?
Well, psychology gives us a couple of really powerful core reasons for this. It's deep-seated stuff. The first big one is something called loss aversion. Decades of cognitive research, people like Kahneman and Tversky, they've shown pretty conclusively that we humans feel the sting of loss about twice as powerfully as we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Twice as much.
Really? Yeah, roughly twice as much. So the psychological pain of accepting that the time, the money, the effort is just gone, accepting that loss of the sunk cost, it's a really high hurdle for our brains to clear. We instinctively fight like mad to avoid acknowledging that loss, even if it means making irrational future choices.
Okay, but hang on. Isn't there a place for persistence, for grit? Sometimes you should push through difficulties, right? How do you tell the difference between being wisely persistent and just falling for the sunk cost trap?
That is the crucial question. And the difference really lies in where your focus is. Genuine grit or perseverance is usually focused on the future potential of success. You believe the next step, the continued effort, has a realistic chance of yielding a positive outcome based on current evidence. The sunk cost fallacy, on the other hand, is almost entirely focused on the past. Your main reason for continuing is because of what I've already invested, or I've come this far, not because the future prospects look good now. If your justification hinges on the past investment, you're almost certainly in the trap. If it hinges on a realistic assessment of future benefit, then it might be perseverance.
That makes sense. It's about future viability versus past justification.
Exactly. And that ties directly into the second big psychological driver, the need for self-justification. Once we've made a significant commitment, starting a big project, choosing a career, even entering a relationship, we have this incredibly strong internal drive to prove to ourselves and maybe to others that our initial decision was the right one.
We don't like admitting we were wrong.
Precisely. Stopping the project, ending the relationship, changing careers, it often feels like admitting I made a bad call back then. And that challenges our self-image, our sense of competence. So we keep going, often subconsciously hoping for some kind of miracle turnaround, some unexpected success that will retroactively prove our original, possibly flawed decision was actually brilliant all along.
That need to be right. Yeah, it's powerful. Okay, so we know why it happens, but how do we fight it? How do we break free? We've got 3 really practical methods drawn from the research that you, listening right now, can actually use. Actionable steps. Number one, use the restart test. This is maybe the single most powerful tool. You ask yourself one simple, brutally honest question. If I hadn't already invested anything in this, no time, no money, no effort, if I were looking at this completely fresh right now this morning, would I choose to start it? Hmm. If the honest answer is no, or even heck no, well, there you go. If the only reason you're still doing it is because of the past investment, you know it's time to cut your losses. It means the project, the situation, has no compelling future value on its own merits.
It's a brilliant mental reset. It completely strips away the emotional baggage of the past investment. It forces you to evaluate the thing based on its present and future potential, which is exactly how rational decisions should be made. It bypasses that loss aversion and need for justification.
Okay, method number two, reframe the loss as a learning cost. This is about changing the story you tell yourself. Stop calling the spent time or money a failure or a waste. That language just reinforces the negative feeling. Instead, consciously relabel it. Think of it as the price you paid for valuable information. It's tuition. You tell yourself, okay, that failed business venture cost me X dollars, but it taught me that this market isn't viable. Or those 5 years in that relationship weren't wasted. They taught me exactly what I need and don't want in a partner.
That knowledge, learning what doesn't work, is incredibly valuable. It prevents you from making the same mistake again. So it's not a loss, it's an investment in future wisdom. You paid a fee to learn a crucial lesson.
Right. It turns something passive and painful loss into something active and useful acquired knowledge.
Yes, exactly. It helps neutralize the emotional sting and allows you to move forward without feeling weighed down by the failure of the past. You're not celebrating the loss, you're using the data it provided.
Okay, and the third method, maintain emotional distance. Or maybe better put, get some emotional distance. If the decision is big, if it's something you're deeply invested in, emotionally quitting a job you've had for years, walking away from a major project, you are probably too close to it to see clearly. Your own biases are too strong. So the advice is, find someone objective, a trusted friend, a mentor, a colleague, maybe even a consultant, depending on situation, someone whose judgment you respect and who isn't emotionally entangled in your past investment. And here's the critical part. You have to instruct them properly. You say, look, please ignore everything I've already put into this. Forget the time, forget the money. Just look at the situation as it is right now and its prospects going forward. Based only on that, what do you think I should do?
That outside perspective can be like a splash of cold water. They don't have your sunk costs clouding their view. They don't feel your loss aversion or your need to justify past decisions. They can often see the rational path much more clearly. They see the reality. Maybe it's a money pit, maybe it's an emotional drain, and they can give you the unbiased advice to cut the cord.
So pulling all this together from our deep dive today, it seems the bravest choices, maybe the best choices we make, are the ones that are laser focused on the future. On maximizing potential from this point onward, it means having the courage to leave the past, especially the unrecoverable parts of it, firmly in the past. If something is consistently making you unhappy, costing you resources without return, or just draining your energy, you have to find the strengths to cut it loose. Leave that sunk cost at the bottom of the sea where it belongs.
And here's a final thought to really chew on. When you choose to continue down a losing path purely because of sunk costs, remember what you're actually doing. You're not saving your past investment. That's impossible. What you are doing is actively, consciously sacrificing your future time, your future money, your future happiness, your future potential. You're trading all of that future possibility for the ghost of a past investment that can never be brought back. Is the past really worth the future you're giving up for it?
That really puts it starkly. A powerful question to consider. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sunk cost fallacy and to why we find it so hard to let go of things, even when we know we should. The tools are here. The next step takes courage. Next time on the deep dive, we're tackling another fascinating bias that quietly steers our choices every day, especially when we shop: the compromise effect. We'll explore why, when faced with a high, a low, and a middle option, we so often gravitate towards the middle one, and what that tells us about our need for safety over, perhaps, actual value. Until then, try applying that restart test. Stay rational, and we'll talk to you next time.